Welcome to the Sky Talk Doc podcast, where we navigate life, relationships, and everything in between with thought-provoking curiosity and a touch of grace. Buckle up, Buttercup. This is a flight you won't forget. Good morning, Cathy, and welcome to the Sky Talk Doc podcast. I'm super excited to talk about true energy. I have trolled your entire website, and this is something I've been really fascinated about for a long time, which is aging gracefully. And, how can we really kind of maintain the facial muscles and our skin and just kind of keep everything functioning optimum without maybe some of the stuff that we've been told we need to use, like Botox and needles in our face and things that terrify me. So I'm super excited for you to just really dive into all the things that you do in the skincare world. And I'd love for you to share with the listeners a little bit about how you got started.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, you're not alone. A lot of people have needle phobia. In fact, actually, it's it's almost 50% of people have some type of a needle phobia. It's crazy, right? So, but yet we have a lot of social pressure. We have a lot of, industry pressure that some people are like, oh, take a Valium, get it done, right? I know.
Nope, not here. Not here.
Yeah, it scared me too. And so, for me, what happened is I had really two defining moments in my life that really kind of directed me where I am. The first was that when I was 26, I got really sick with Crohn's disease, ended up in the hospital. 3 months later, 2 years later, 7 surgeries, almost died a couple of times.
Wow.
And so I really kind of went from had been doing prerequisites for doctor of osteopathic DO school. And I ended up going, a little bit of a 180 and deciding that, you know what, I think I am more built for holistic medicine because I'm not seeing where the healing system is in allopathic medicine. Like there's a respiratory system, there's a digestive system, but there's no healing system, right?
Right.
So it saved my life. But once I was like, I need to get out of here, it was, what do I need to do to get better? So I went to acupuncture school. And because of, innately how that works is because of how I got into holistic medicine. I had a lot of patients with autoimmune disorders and respiratory, infectious, Crohn's disease, irritable bowel disease. And it really kind of you're my last resort kind of mentality on, really trying to navigate, people navigating their health. But at 49, I had something that kind of really diverted that pathway because, I had a busy practice. I had multiple associate doctors and, would have been considered like I would top of my game, right? But at 49, I inadvertently caught myself in the mirror unexpectedly. And I went, when the heck did that happen? And I realized that how I looked and how I felt were not matching. And I was really, kind of taken back to the drawing board, if you will, and saying, what am I missing? What's the fundamental here? What's the underlying issue that is really going on? And it was looking at the skin, not just as a skin superficial thing, but as a underlying system, like a full system. What underlies that presents on the skin is not, the skin is just a reflection, right? So and I think you really, that's kind of where you were digging in initially. It's like, is aging optimalistically and, in timelessly is because we know it's, part of our full system.
I have so many thoughts on that too. I mean,
Yeah.
as you're talking, I'm thinking about when I first started learning about the microbiome and gut health and autoimmune and how these things are responses to various things that are maybe living dormant in our body. And
Yes.
these creatures that kind of tag along in our lifetime, parasites, etc., that thrive in places that are maybe not optimum from a pH standpoint and are filled with yeast and
Yeah.
what we know as candida or mold,
Yeah.
and how it really all interacts. And if you think about what that combination of stuff would do, even just in a petri dish sitting in your fridge, right? Or a
Right.
chunk
It
of
would be
cheese, like
scary.
we can see how that would ultimately play out. We know how those things look on the outside of any vegetable that's living in our refrigerator or on our countertop, right?
Good point. Good point. Yeah.
One of the things that I've struggled with extensively, and the listeners on this podcast know, is that I have a severe nickel allergy, like a
Uh,
systemic nickel type thing. And so, how I first learned about it was when I was young and I put in cosmetic jewelry in my
oh
ears
yeah,
and had
yeah.
a reaction there. So I knew I had a nickel thing from when I was very young, because my mom actually had my ears pierced when I was just a few months old. What ended up happening later in life is I wanted to wear fun eyeshadows that had glitter and different things like that.
Mm,
And that's when I started to learn about, iron oxides, the 7791s and all the 77s. And what I found was, when I am stressed, I have a
yeah,
zero tolerance policy for nickel. I mean, it could be a little candy that's wrapped in a paper that has some nickel with it, and it's going to
right,
produce a response. But
right.
when I'm not at elevated stress levels, I can actually handle small traces of nickel. Certainly wouldn't want to rub it on my eyes every day.
Sure. Well, that
But
would increase your stress, wouldn't it?
yeah, yeah. So for me, I've always kind of been a holistic person, and I've just really not found the bottom of the knowledge that there is
Mm,
available. I feel like there's just so much that's coming out on this. In the process of really becoming interested in other ways to stay strong physically as I'm
mm,
aging, I feel like, the algorithms start to show you things, and I've started to see the geisha
right.
tools and the rubber balls and the face gyms and all these different things. But I've always kind of been the type of person that's like massaging
Uh,
my sinus cavity
yes,
and kind of doing all these different
yeah,
like things and stuff.
lymphatics, yeah.
Yeah, and so I love that you have this component to it too, and I'd love to learn a little bit more about how that actually works in terms
Okay,
of the facial muscles. And I've
right.
always kind of taken the approach, a body that rests rusts. So we've got to
Oh,
keep
yeah, yeah,
kind of
yeah.
working
Stay in
it.
motion. Yeah,
And I've
exactly,
learned a
right?
lot about like keeping the tongue on the top of the mouth, and then how that helps elongate here. So I'd love to hear a little bit about your training in that.
Yeah. So I have a lot of training in neuroemotional connection in that in my practice use a lot of neuroemotional connections, like releasing the emotions help to like close that limbic loop of like unfinished business.
Wow.
And then I also, in my practice, use a lot of what we call integration. So, integration, like you'll do a treatment and then you need to integrate that into the nervous system, right? So, you're, using frequencies and light therapy, sound therapy, red light therapy, crystal therapy, so all of these therapies that speak the language of the body to help it to integrate. And just to touch on that, because people are like, what do you mean by that? It's kind of retuning a piano, right? You can have a tuning fork, and the tuning fork is this in this case is like the frequencies, and you have a piano that's out of tune, which is like the body, right? And so you can hold a tuning fork that is vibrating at that healthy frequency, and the longer you're exposed to it, the more your body picks up and going, I know what I'm supposed to be doing now, and starts like vibrating at that healthier frequency, and now you've got the healthier integration, right? So, and then the other aspect, just to kind of talk about the muscles of the face in relative to this conversation, is some of the things that happen is really kind of two things. One is that the emotions that we experience throughout our life, and nobody goes unscathed in this lifetime, kind of get stuck on our face. So our facial expressions, right? And it's because the muscle, yeah, exactly, right? Or yeah, because the facial expressions are, yeah. You remember when your mom said, "Don't keep that face."
Legitimately, I often tell the kids and my partner, like, I can't handle this right now because my emotions are not going to respond well. Like,
Where you're
I
like,
literally like, nope, nope, I'm
yeah,
not
yeah.
stressing about that.
But that's actually like you have that next level awareness that the muscles of the face are very different than the muscles of the body, and like how they release, like because they do get like repetitive facial expressions get stuck, if you will. Usually the negative more than the positive, because it actually takes, yeah, a lot less smile muscles than frown, and a lot more
Right,
frowning muscles, right?
right,
So the other aspect of you're talking about where you're like with the kids, it's like, no, 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 can't handle this right now, is that we also the silent language before our mouth opens, before a word comes out, is all about facial expressions, which is hugely valuable because, as a mom, you're talking about teaching your, let's just say, teenage children how to read expressions, right?
Mhm,
So
mhm.
it's developing that emotional intelligence so that they develop the soft skills, they know how to relate to people, they become really strong in being able to be, empathetic and understanding and resilient. But the way that works is not exactly how a lot of people think it is or does. How it works is that when we make those micro expressions, and maybe in mimicking somebody else's expressions, it's those muscle contractions sends information, those neurotransmitters back to the
Mhm.
mammalian part of the brain, the emotional part of the brain that, tells us how we feel about things. So I make these facial expressions mimicking yours. My brain says, oh, this is how I feel about that. Oh, this is how you feel about that. And so it's this limbic loop that actually really is what connects us as human beings, and understanding and empathy and
Well,
love.
you're 100% speaking my love language because this is exactly what I teach my couples in my client sessions.
Oh,
And I'll say, whoa, did you just pick up on the expression that your partner made? There was a lot of
right.
information in there to receive. And truly, the majority of all communication is nonverbal.
Right.
We detect 11 million bits of data a second before we open our mouth. And so this is a huge part of it. And I actually have taken extensive training in micro expressions so that I can be a better
Beautiful.
psychotherapist. Now, the downside to that is I can't turn it off. So whatever environment I'm in, I'm constantly reading micro expressions,
Right.
and that's how I
Yeah.
know when people are bullshitting too. I'm like, nope, nope, you're not going to pull one over on me because I'm too in tune to this.
Absolutely. But imagine if your muscles were frozen, you wouldn't
Yeah.
be able to create that micro expression on your face that helps you to understand it. And then if
Right.
their muscles are frozen, you're like, I don't really understand what you're thinking or saying. And that's actually what
Mm.
happens in a 3D MRI with teenagers, is
Wow.
that when they are seeing people who have a lot of Botox and fillers and like, or no expression, and they are in the 3D MRI watching that communication, it actually fires up their mammalian brain to like as if they're under stress,
Oh.
right? Especially that amygdala, which says, "Am I
Mhm.
safe? Am I safe? Am I safe?" Right? And and then what happens is that they are fired up as if they're under stress or pain or anxiety. How many
Mm.
teens have anxiety now? So it's hugely important to, in our world of not just communication but connectivity, to
Yeah.
be able to like have that go both ways.
Something that I had to do when I was in my master's program for becoming a therapist was we actually had to watch ourselves in a session on
Oh,
a
yeah.
on a playback, and I was like, "Oh, I think I need to fix my face," because there would be times where I'd be like, "Mm."
Yeah. Well, that's you, right? Very interesting, because that's
Yeah,
you, like, "I'm not buying your BS. This sounds like a story," right?
right,
But yeah, so, but if you were not in a therapy session where your job is to try to stay neutral so that they can have
right.
a self-discovery, but if
Yeah.
you were in communication with, like, a partner, they would see that and they go, "They're not buying my crap." Yeah.
Right, right, exactly. And so
It's
one of the
yeah.
things that I've worked on is really keeping a more positive expression throughout
Mm,
my sessions, and it's a lot more work. It's a lot more work to hold this up, and so I sometimes well, not sometimes, I oftentimes have people say, "Wow, you look a lot" when they find out my age, "You look a lot younger than you are," and I say, "Well, I work hard at
you've been
smiling."
building those, but yeah.
Yeah, I actually work hard at this. Talk to me a little bit about you have a variety of products on your website, including the tools as well as the skincare. And I've heard so much, and I've obviously, being allergic to some key
Yes,
things, I'm very cautious about what I put on my skin. How do you formulate the products?
right.
You say they're bioadaptive. I'm curious about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. So this is actually my favorite topic because my practice was full of patients with allergies, because that's
Okay.
like the biggest autoimmune expression of a gut disruptance and stuff like that, right?
Yep.
So, yeah, so and I had sensitive skin, I mean with Crohn's disease, of course, and my sister has super sensitive skin and eczema and stuff like that. So, yeah, I mean, actually, it's been a long time since I got hives, but when this camera came out, I was like, oh, I've got a little hive. Look at that, and I know that that's like a allergic reaction. So I'm, like I'm like, discovery. Oh, okay. I was laying down, early this morning and had a pillow on my face or whatever, so you
Yep.
kind of do discovery.
Yeah.
But it definitely led to the formulation of the True Energy products, because one is that their FDA natural is not natural enough, like, qualified as natural products, not natural enough for me. And so the other is like, when I with my chemist, in the formulations, I want pure ingredients, not combinations of ingredients. Because when you start combining ingredients, that's where the preservatives come in that are unlisted. Same
Mm.
thing with like perfumes or fragrances. This is a area where 300 different chemicals can be hidden under the umbrella of proprietary fragrance, right? I can't tell you what that is
It's
because
a
it's a
blend. It's
secret.
my proprietary blend.
Yes,
Right,
yes,
right.
yes, you're right, protect it.
Mhm.
So, that's potential for, hundreds of different chemicals. So, I'm definitely very, very hands-on. I also, in that bioadaptive aspect, is there's several different things with that. One is that, everybody's skin is a different place at a different time, including your skin today versus your skin in, 3 months, right?
Right, right.
So, it has to provide the nutrients that meet your skin's needs where it is.
Mm,
Right?
mhm,
So,
mhm.
for example, it has probiotics in it. So
Yeah.
if the first layer of challenge is, damage to the mantle, the pH mantle, making your face more vulnerable to outside environmental toxins and disruptive of of the superficial layers of the space, that probiotic is clutch, right? And then let's go on a deeper level, is that, for example, you can't put a collagen molecule in the skin and expect it to not just penetrate, but do something in particular. Generally speaking, it's much too large. So,
Mm.
what I do is I use bioavailable peptides
Yeah.
that actually have that ability to penetrate. But on a third layer is my delivery system. I use what's called an oleosome delivery system. So
Mhm.
it's kind of like taking nutrients and putting it in a seed, and then having the seed go to where it needs to go, open up and deliver the actual nutrients where they need to be on the level that they like, on that layer it needs to be.
I hear so much about the free radicals and removing them from the body in terms of antioxidants and tissue cell salts and different things about how do we actually get it to fire down the neurotransmitter to the cellular level that it needs to, end up
Yeah,
at. And
right,
I
right.
find that really fascinating in terms of how the system is a pulley, right? Things are coming in, but we also have to get things out on that
Yes.
circular pulley system, and having lymph flowing properly, the liver unblocked, the kidney unblocked. It's an entire process.
Understood. Yeah, exactly. And so that's where like the True Energy uses, where I use technology, like the frequency technology, right? So in every jar there's a little green bead,
Mm.
in every jar, and I imprint those beads, or it's either blue or green, right, depending on what it does. I imprint that with frequencies to optimize, the ingredients. So it's designed to work with the system to make it more optimal in everything that it's supposed to do. And those are like kind of the missing factors. The other, like you're saying, is that the wand, which is the tool, is also imprinted with frequencies to not just optimize the outcome of the results, but the system is like it's a very methodical process to
Mm.
drain the lymphatics, release
Mhm.
the fascia,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Lengthen the muscles that are tight, because that's a major thing that a lot of people don't think about, right? And then that gives it the opportunity to lift where it needs to pop and refat. And that's the ingredients, the frequency, right?
Well,
So
so much to that. I've even learned about cellulite as the rubber band, right? It's that tight fascia pulling down that's creating the pucker mark and those sorts of things. But I also use red light and blue light and different. I even use electrical stimulation now. Actually, I have a machine that actually kind of awakens the muscles with just a very light. I use an emulsifier that protects the skin, and it's very mellow. It's not anything crazy,
right,
but I've learned a lot
right,
about how a lot of the EMF and radiation and various things in our world are actually killing that. So we kind of have to wake it back up in the right way. We're
right.
kind of like microwaving our faces and our bodies, so to speak.
Yes, yeah, penetrating deep.
But, I have a friend who is in the plant medicine world, and I recently took her workshop. Everything originates in Germany, but she even talks about how the people that are putting together the product and the energy in which they're doing it and their own
Oh,
belief
great.
system and the vibration that's associated with that.
Okay.
It seems a little woo woo, but when you think about everything
No.
being energy, and
Yeah.
everything being frequency, it
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
does make sense. And the tuning forks is kind of funny too. I have a series of tuning forks. I've yet to really dive into the biofield and kind of figure out how to work those out. But my dad, it's ironic. My dad is a very old school Western, give me the Tylenol kind of guy. And I took these tuning forks over to him to kind of wake his body up. And I was doing all the things. He goes, we actually have this in construction, but it's a different way. And I said, oh, yeah, what's that? And he said, it's called witching sticks. He said, we
Oh,
use
yeah.
copper
Water.
rods to find water. And my dad and I got into a fascinating conversation about how water has memory and so when you start to put this all together, it's really not that woo woo. And we're using it in various different ways every day in our life
Right.
without realizing that we're using frequency, energy, and vibration.
Right. Yes, yes. And you know what's interesting when you were talking about how that affects, how our energy affects everything, like the, like the person who's actually putting that together. There's actually in a controlled environment, they've actually seen that if you have a, if you will, like under a microscope, a bin, I'm just going to say a bin of atoms and quartz, that being unobserved, it has its own pattern. But as soon as a person starts observing that, it changes the pattern, right?
Yes.
Like water's molecules
Masaru
in the water.
Emoto's work. Yes.
Yes, yes,
So
exactly,
fascinating.
right?
Yeah.
So that actually is why every single one of the tools I have is imprinted by me
Yeah,
in
I love
a
that.
controlled space where I can set, the energy around that
Intention.
space and know that it's being done consistently. Now, I also, I mean, you definitely refer to me as woo woo, right? But I'm also very scientific in the sense that I want things to be repeatable, right? So yeah, like one time result doesn't tell me anything, but if
Right.
I can have right, so if I can have multiple, proof that something can be repeated, and that's actually technically the underlying of science, right? Then I'm on board. So how I imprint them has to do with a very scientific process of being able to, create reagents and do the imprinting. But on top of it, I also make sure that my space is cleared. I have no EMFs in the space that influence and things like that,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
So yeah, so I'm with you on that whole. There's these two worlds. We use them all the time. They affect us all the time.
We
There you
don't think
go.
about it when we're accepting a call on our cell phone, right? Like, we just do that, and that's not woo-woo. But when we're talking about what you and I are talking about, it's like,
Yeah,
well, but we're
exactly. Right,
talking
right.
about the exact same fundamental concepts here,
Right.
So
Fiber optics,
Mhm,
light, that's
mhm,
light, fiber optics. So when I talk
right.
about biophoton, bio life, or light, and biophoton is the body light or the life light. Same concept as the, fiber optics. I mean, how crazy is that you can pick up the phone or do what we're doing from across the world?
I love when people will say to me if I start talking about this sort of stuff and they say, I don't believe in that. I said, well, on
It's
some
not a
level
belief.
you do because you're engaging with it every single day.
Yeah.
What you
Yeah.
mean is you don't want to
I
learn
don't
enough about it. That's different, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And, there's a lot of stuff we don't know that work that we still don't know why. That's why, there's quantum physics research. How does that work? What does that mean? What does that look like? Well, let's try to research it and see it. And just because our physical world is just so founded in, belief systems, our other world is very, very much happening all around us.
Well, and it's fascinating because it's always been a gotta see it to believe it, right? That's the phrasing. And now we're living in an AI world where people are
Yeah,
starting to realize, is it really about what you see or is it about what you don't see? You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah.
And
That's a good point.
experience. I
Yes,
love that so much. Where can people find your product? We do always include everything in the show notes, but where's the best place for them to go to
sure.
learn about it?
So I would do the main website, which is trueenergyskincare.com. And True Energy is TrueEnergy skincare.com. And then I have, a section in there that's, all about that natural facelift system. I did the study with Dr. Pugliese, to really show actual results. Or that there's my scientific mind, need to see, consistency, and that's actually a great place to start.
And so if people are maybe in a situation where they're like, my skin is too far gone, either I've done too much sun damage or I've eaten too much crap food. What do you have to say to people that might be afraid that they're just a lost cause?
Yeah, you know what? I love actually the way you phrase that, because that is the black and white of it. And in my mind, and I'm sure in yours as well, is there is no such thing as it's too late. It's never too late. It is never too late, because everything we do today not only affects us, tomorrow and 30 days from now, but 10 years from now. So the changes that you can make in 30 days are unbelievable. I have proof of that.
Yeah.
And even my own personal proof of that with just health. But what how you live your life, it's really hard for us as humans who look for immediate gratification to know that if we eat organic and drink plenty of water and exercise and meditate, that we actually are changes our quality of life in the future. It's a really hard thing for us to grasp. So ultimately, I just can tell you that it's never too late, and everything doesn't have to be done perfectly.
I like that. There's room for, beautiful mistakes that lead to other
Yeah.
things. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, usually what I experience is people come to me when they're at critical mass. They're at
Right.
overhaul. That's where they're at.
Yeah.
And so I always tell clients, gosh, if I'd gotten to you 2 years ago. So we're
Yeah.
starting now. This is our baseline. This is where we're going from.
It's
And
all
we can
good.
benchmark this. And that's something. For me, it's always like, shoot, I've got a photo shoot next Friday. What can I do in 5 days? Like, I gotta get this done, and then I'm
Yeah.
pulling out all the things.
The tune up. It's the tune. That's where I go. I need tune ups.
And usually my go-tos are, okay, I'm doing a juice fast, that usually, I mean, it's amazing what a juice fast will do in some coffee oil. I can't believe coffee oil and coconut oil. They're like my go-tos. But I definitely notice, if my scalp is starting to have dandruff or if
Oh
I'm
yeah.
starting to have dry skin, immediately
Look
I'm
for
like,
those.
okay,
Yeah.
we need to go inside out, because that by the
Right.
time I'm seeing it on the outside, there's already a whole lot on
That's
the
right.
inside.
That's
Yeah.
right. But you're smart though, because you're talking about looking for those little signs that, you might bypass pretty quickly. Like, for me, it's like how I feel emotionally. Like for me, I tend to, in Chinese medicine, be more like, a spleen qi kind of weakness person, right? So as soon as I start overthinking, I'm thinking to myself, oh, I need balance, right? Or
Mhm.
irritability, oh, I need balance, right?
Yep. Yep. My lips get chapped. I know that we're talking about communication and all the things associated with the mouth. If my teeth start hurting, okay, what do we
Oh,
do?
well, yeah, yeah, right
But
there. Yeah.
yeah, totally. It's funny. My partner actually says that he can feel his stress in his gums. It's like the first place that
Oh,
he picks up on it, which is really interesting.
great awareness. Great
And well,
awareness.
and we try to live cleanly enough, I think, that you can pick up on those things. If you're
Yeah.
eating bags of Doritos and drinking Coke every day, you're probably not going to have
It's,
that.
you make a good point. You make a good point. You have to be the Ferrari with the fuel,
Right. Right.
to
Yeah.
notice those tiny nuances. Oh, I felt a little drag right there.
That's a really good analogy. Yes, exactly. Well, it's been so wonderful to have you on today to talk about these things. And I love that you're combining the neuroscience component with kind of the frequency, vibration, energy. And that's just really fascinating.
Thank you. Well, I loved having the opportunity to talk to you. I mean, like you said, just like, it's like yum, when you get to an audience that actually speaks the language because they've been listening to you and, engaging with you. And that's a really exciting place to be able to kind of dive into. So I appreciate the time and with you as well.
It so is wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Cathy, for coming on today. And folks, definitely check out the notes so that you can learn all about True Energy and what she's doing over there with skincare and natural facelifts. The views expressed in this podcast aren't necessarily those of the Sky Talk Doc. They're here to challenge your thinking and inspire growth. Until next time, blue skies and tailwinds.